Craig, an absolute pleasure to have your company tonight. You've joined us for the half-time discussion piece interview at the Fife Derby, the first Fife Derby, and a derby like no others. Sadly, one where it won't have the north and the south stand absolutely buzzing with fans, but they're at home, they're on their couches, they're in the kitchen, they're getting their half-time refreshments. So we're going to have a bit of a chat. I hope that our chat will be a wee bit longer than the 8-minute piece that we'll put out. And Dunfermline and Raith Rovers fans will get a chance to see the longer edit maybe midweek. So I'm going to start really just by asking you a wee bit about the derby itself, Craig. The 92-93 season, undefeated for Raith Rovers in terms of the 4 games against Dunfermline. But I'm actually interested in the kind of concept of the derby. Prior to coming to Raith Rovers, did you have any kind of inkling of the significance of the Fife Derby? Was it a fixture that you were aware of, or were you kind of taken by surprise by probably about 6,000 at each of those games?
Well, I think every footballer grows up knowing about derbies and how important they are. Like when I was at Forfar, I played against Brecon, so that was the main derby in North Angus. And then obviously I played in a few in my career since at Dundee derbies, Edinburgh derbies. But like any derby, they're all massive for each and every supporter. And playing in 4 that year, we obviously came out successful in 3 and drew in the other, but against a really good Dunfermline team then. But you know, that's what these players will miss on Saturday. You know, the fans in derbies, that's what it's all about. That blood and thunder and the 100-mile-an-hour, the way the game gets played. So obviously referees have got a tough time when there's fans, but they'll maybe think it's slightly easier managing both sets of players.
Well, were you taken aback in any way at the pace and ferocity, as you say there? Was it something, I mean, Jimmy Nicholl had spent some time at Dunfermline prior to being at Raith Rovers, so had you been kind of clued into the importance of this particular fixture in the calendar?
Yeah, I think it's the fans that and everybody around the club that give all the players, management, the nod to say, by the way, we're winning here against Dunfermline, and vice versa. That's how much it means to fans in the clubs themselves. The players have just got to go on the pitch and do a job, as every player does. But it's that extra excitement for players, knowing that you go out there and it's a full house, everybody's buzzing, and you're hoping you produce that bit of magic on the day that lights up a derby, and you can be the hero.
Absolutely. In terms of your own joining Raith Rovers, 1991 you joined, first season a kind of 7th place finish. I think the big thing, we spoke yesterday, and one of the big things you're noting was the transition from being a kind of central midfield player, and Jimmy Nicholl seen that extra something and converted into this centre forwards role. What was it that Jimmy saw in you? What was that he spoke in terms of, you know, I'd like to push you forward? Because we're quite a kind of talented bunch, even in 91, thinking of kind of Ian Ferguson, Alan McKenzie was around, of course, Gordon Dalziel. What was Jimmy's thoughts in pushing you forward?
When Jimmy signed me, my career was going nowhere at Forfar, and he's seen something in me that obviously he liked. And just coming to Raith, that gave me a real buzz. And then I was a sulky soccer midfield player, liked scoring goals, didn't like tracking back, didn't like tackling much. But he obviously seen something that, okay, he's got more goals in him. And he put me up front after about 3 months, and then I never looked back for the rest of my career. So I've got a lot to thank Jimmy Nick for.
The kind of obvious thing that we speak about is the partnership that you had in the second season, you know, a 55-goal partnership with Gordon Dalziel. Are partnerships like that just organic, or do you actually work intensely hard behind the scenes? We know Gordon likes to kind of have the bit of bravado and everything's very easy with him, but were you a partnership that were just fluid and natural, or did you just have to work very hard at it?
Well, it comes down to individuals' strengths and combining with each other. I had certain strengths. Daz was more about penalty box. That's what Daz loved. You know, those tap-ins, being around the 6-yard box, and he had a career full of them. And I always say to him, Daz, you always score 33 of my rebounds. He just gives me the wink, you know. But yeah, our combination play, but we played with a really good team, and in that team we had fantastic individuals. We had a great balance of experience and energy from younger players. So that combination really worked wonders. And for me, coming to Raith, where my career was going nowhere, to see Jimmy Nicholl in action day in, day out, transformed my career. I went to myself, well, if he's running that 50 yards to close down, I better get the finger out. And honestly, he transformed my career.
It's an interesting point you make there, Craig, because you know, even us fans who are fortunate enough to have attended each and every one of those games, the focus is always on Jimmy Nicholl, the manager, when we think of it, particularly in '94 with a cup win, but his impact as a player was hugely significant as well, wasn't it?
Absolutely massive. And he obviously took care of himself, and you know, fans at clubs, when they see an older professional coming into a club and they say, what are we signing this old player for? It has, if that senior player is a good character and can show these young players how to act day in, day out, game in, game out, it stands these young players' careers, honestly, absolutely wonderful, because what I seen in him, then it transfers into yourself, and it had a real knock-on effect.
What about the signing of Peter Hetherston? How big a signing was that? You know, Ian Ferguson went to Hearts, freed up some money there. But how big was he in terms of the kind of creative engine of the team?
Well, did you say Peter Hetherston?
Peter Hetherston, yeah.
Yeah, Peter. Well, you spoke about the season 92-93, but it started around about the turn of 92, January 92, when we went on an unbelievable run, and it just kept going. So when he was massively influential when he came to the club from Falkirk, he was a real figure where he could dish out the banter. Everybody loved Peter. He was happy at the club. He was a top man, and you know, people love to try and get in about him, but very few bettered him. And he had a great talent on the pitch.
Can I ask you about it's probably really unfair to say they're unsung heroes, but they're just particular favourite players of mine, watching that particular team, who sometimes the focus kind of drifts from. I was wanting to ask you a wee bit about our goalkeeper, Gordon Arthur, Ronnie Coyle, and Ian McLeod. How important was their steadying influence, or indeed were they a steadying influence, or did that just how it looked from us fans on the periphery?
Well, Gordon Arthur, again, doesn't get well talked about because he just did his job and he did it well. And you know, goalkeepers, consistency was Gordon's big thing. That never made mistakes, just got on with his job, was loved by everybody because he didn't try to be somebody he wasn't, did his job, went home happy, and we seen him the next day in training. That was Gordon. Ronnie Coyle was an absolute diamond for me. Ronnie was a real talented boy, having grown up at Celtic. And sadly, Ronnie is no longer with us, along with Ian McLeod, who, again, was another fabulous character, very intellectual, very intelligent guy. And those three with good experience helped the younger one. Sean Dennis George, you alluded George McGeechy. George played a massive part when I first went to Raith as well, and he'd helped young boys like Sean Dennis come on massively. Another big one that was an absolute stalwart for me was Davy Sinky. He was absolutely brilliant, loved by everybody, and he was a total winner. And he wasn't brilliant technically, but Sinky, you'd have Sinky in the trenches with you all day long. So that balance, those three characters that you were on about, gave the younger ones a platform where they could express themselves and learn from.
I mean, certainly Sean and Davy Sinclair have both said in interviews about the importance of George McGeechy in their careers. Davy will be particularly interested to hear himself being praised, because he tunes into RaithTV most Saturdays, so I'm sure he'll be tuning in for the derby. Of course, we could go through blow by blow, but I wanted to just pick out a couple of games and get your thoughts on them for that particular season. The first one I wanted to pick on wasn't a league game, it was the 4-1 League Cup win against Motherwell. They were the Scottish Cup holders at the time, came to Starks Park, and if I, as a supporter, if I could see one game again, if we could magic up that videotape, that I don't think there is any footage of it, that's the one I would go for beyond many others. What were your own recollections of that game? You got a couple of goals. The Motherwell team that day was outstanding in terms of names. And the third question I would put to you, Craig, is do you remember Martin Nelson's goal?
I remember it was about 30-yard screamer. I can't recall my two goals that night, but I remembered his goal, which was special. It was a midweek game at home, under the lights, full house at Starks Park. The place was buzzing against the Premier League side, against a legend, Davy Cooper. Davy Cooper played for Motherwell that night, and we tore them to shreds. Absolutely. And for me, it showed you the quality we had in the team. And little Marty Nelson. Yeah, I think every player on that pitch that night remembers Marty's goal.
It was one of those goals that certainly it lives in the folklore in Kirkcaldy, and for I think about 5 or 6 years it seemed to go 3 or 4 yards further back every time. But I think the general consensus is that that probably the folk on the bench could have reached out and touched him. It was just in front of the enclosure. So I'm glad you do remember that. How good a player was Martin?
Oh, Martin would play on a Friday night, 5-a-sides in Glasgow with his mates for an hour and a half. And Jimmy Nicholl used to crack up that Marty would be playing. He just loved playing football, and a little dynamo. Ability was unbelievable. Left-sided, yeah, just a little jinky. Maybe not just quite as good as Davy Cooper, but certainly a quality player.
Yeah, and we look through the kind of clipping I've got here for that particular game, and I was looking at the squad Motherwell had: Bobby Russell, John Phillippen, Phil O'Donnell, Chris McCart, Stevie Kirk, kind of Rovers legend, Steve Dykstra, I think made his debut, Dougie Arnott, and of course David Cooper. So it certainly wasn't, it was a team that had just won the Scottish Cup, and they certainly weren't kind of winding down. So very special night, as you say. Always better under the floodlights. Is that the same for players as it is for fans, Craig?
Yeah, without a doubt. A home game at night, under the lights, packed house, it doesn't get better. Now,
you're not going to need a second guess to know the second game that I'm going to pick out. First game of the season, first league game. I told you a wee story yesterday that it helped pay my season ticket for the following year. My one and only time I've put a bet on us to win the league, and the generous odds going up to Starks Park were not repeating the way out. 7-0 against a St Mirren team that had a European Cup winner in it, and Paul Lambert. What was your recollections of that day? Had Jimmy fired you up that this was a season that we could press for promotion?
Well, I think what I said earlier, with that run starting back in probably the January time of '92, Davy, and I don't know, I can't recall how many signings Jimmy had made in the summer, but the majority of players, basically, the young boys had grown a year older, and we're playing against a Premier League side at home that had just been relegated. First game of the season. I think it was a beautiful day.
It was a lovely day.
So we've had a good pre-season. Desperate to get the season started, and just came out the blocks that it was just one of these games as a player. You just don't want it to stop. And 7-0 was incredible scoreline.
Can you remember your own goals?
Vaguely.
1-1 in the 6-yard box. Can you remember the free kick for the edge of the box? I watched it last night. It's a bit special.
Both into the way end, wouldn't it?
Yeah, both in the way end. I'll get that. I'll get a video of that game down to you. Other goals. Mr. Diel steps up to the plate with a hat trick. Jason Dare, who we'll touch on when we speak about Dunfermline scores, and of course your great pal Ronnie Coyle rounds it off.
Yep, Ronnie. I remember Ronnie dribbling, as Jimmy Nicholl used to have a few scary moments of Ronnie dribbling out the back four, but we were obviously a few ahead that day. He started, received the ball in possession, drove forward, bounced a 1-2 with me. He's through, rounds the keeper, and scores the goal. Honestly, that made the day.
Lovely. I mean, I do think I don't think I'd be sticking my neck out and saying, certainly for folks of kind of my generation who can't think back to the kind of 30s and 40s and the record goal scoring team. It will be the season that people go back to and say, is it our best ever season? Looking at the stats of it, we lose 4 games out of 44, and we score 85 goals en route. I mean, is that just alchemy? Is that just that things just fall into place, or is there really a bit of kind of true genius in what Jimmy and his squad managed to pull off?
Well, Jimmy gave us belief. He gave us the encouragement. He gave us his knowledge and allowed players to express themselves. As I said earlier, we had a great balance to the team. I watched a little clip before I came on air with you, and it was the game we won the title at home against Dumbarton. And the clip on the video gets Mickey Cameron receiving the ball on the halfway line and driving forward, beating 2 or 3 players, and the fans behind the goal. It's incredible that's the way football's got to be played. You know, that's the way we played. Because, as you said, we scored 80 odd goals because we got the ball and we drove forward. We ran forward. We took players on. We got balls into the box. And fans loved it. And I loved it as well. Absolutely.
Crowd of 5,000, beautiful day. You scored the 2 goals, and it certainly was kind of part of the story that led to your induction into the Raith Rovers Hall of Fame. Can you tell us about that particular experience, Craig, the pride that was felt by yourself and your family? But I'm also keen to hear a great friend that we share, Jim Clark, was telling me about your journey up for that and the commitment that you made to make sure you were going to be there in the night. Could you tell Rovers fans that story?
Yeah, I was assistant down at Plymouth, and I spoke to the manager to say, look, Raith were desperate for me to go up and receive the award. And he said, sorry, you can't go. So I managed to get there. I drove in the afternoon. I'd driven down from my house to Plymouth at 4:30 on the Monday morning, arrive in training, train. I leave at 2 o'clock to drive up to Bristol, 2 hours. I jumped on a plane to Edinburgh, where Jim Clark met me, hired the car. We drove to Kirkcaldy. We had the event, fabulous night. My mother, my mates came over, and it was a fabulous night. I left Kirkcaldy at 11:30 that night. I drove all the way back down to Bristol, swapped the hired car for my car at Bristol Airport, drove to Plymouth, arrived in Plymouth at 8:30 the next morning, ready for training.
It's straight to training. Well, if that's not dedication, you said at one point when you joined the Rovers that you're a midfield player who didn't like to track back and could be a bit lazy. There was no laziness involved in that.
Yeah, well,
quite a trip.
You know, when you get credited with an award like that, then you've got to try and pull out all the stops to get there. You don't get too many awards in football, but when people recognise the achievements you've made for their club, then it was for me to make sure I got there, and I'm certainly glad I did.
Brilliant. I'm going to turn to our neighbours up the road for the next kind of part of the interview. It's absolutely vital for us. I'm sure it's the same for other club TV kind of channels. We're run by volunteers, but we're the only route just now that all fans have got to watch their team. So ordinarily, we've got a massive, the right side of bias focus on our team, but it's absolutely imperative that we give a good service to our near neighbours and anyone else who's tuning into RaithTV to see their team. So I wanted to ask you about your time at East End, and obviously I wear my colours, I'm a Rovers fan, but who were the big characters in the dressing room at that time? You were part of a dressing room that we spoke about some of the names that is quite legendary in terms of some of the nonsense that went on. Was the Dunfermline dressing room quite as boisterous?
Well, in every dressing room throughout the country, there's always characters, and we had a great set of players there as well. Like, I was lucky enough to spend 2 great years at the Rovers. That 2 years changed my career, because my career was going nowhere to suddenly, boom, and it kicked off. Then I went to Dunfermline at the end of my career. I went to Dunfermline at 35, and people are thinking, you know, he's past it. But the link up that I shared with Stevie Crawford, Stevie was a young boy at the Rovers,
right, and
he took my place when I went back to Dundee United. He took my place, and then I partnered him all these years later, going to Dunfermline, and it was amazing first year that we had. But the characters, you know, Nipper was a big character. Scott Wilson, Lee Bullen, Barry Nick. It was just a great squad as well we had there. And, you know, Jimmy Nick and Jimmy Calderwood. That was the management team. 2 great characters. And players loved playing for them. So it was quite a boisterous dressing room. And when it's a happy dressing room, you know, the banter, all the slagging, and it goes on in every dressing room, and the success was there to see on the pitch as well. So I've only absolute brilliant memories of both clubs, and spending 2 years at the Rovers and nearly 2.5 at Dunfermline, there's not many players that can say they've had amazing times at both clubs.
At both. You mentioned about the dressing room there. Is that the importance of recruiting personalities and making sure that the personalities fit as well as purely talent? I mean, you'll have seen that from your managerial perspective as well.
Yeah, definite. Characters can make or break a manager, but Jimmy Calderwood, Jimmy Nick, strong characters. Players knew where they stood, what the boundaries were, and you know, players respected that. And key though, the groups of players that I had in both dressing rooms, it was just brilliant, especially when the teams are playing well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, looking in from the outside at that time that you were at Dunfermline, the standout and the landmark moment is the cup final. What's your abiding memory of that? I mean, I actually do remember watching the game. I remember you've been 1-up. I remember the, you know, kind of sense of injustice, possibly the manner in which the equaliser happened. What's your recollections?
Similar. 1-0 up. Andre Skerla scored 1-0 half time, and then we get a corner. Corner comes in. I'm thinking I'm heading this. Never hit my head. Bobo Balde's punched it. Celtic went up the park and equalised. And that was it. Henrik Larsson's last game, scores 2 goals. They win 3-1, and we go home disappointed. But for an hour, we gave them a right good game, Celtic.
We look back at the Motherwell game in the squad that Motherwell had that particular night, but I think that the Scottish Cup experience that you had takes it up a notch when you look at the Celtic team: Varga, Larsson, Balde, McNamara, Didier Agat, Lennon, Petrov, Sutton, Lambert, Mjallby. I mean, you really had to go toe-to-toe with a quite legendary team in Scottish football there.
Yeah, definite. When you look at being a centre forward and you come up against Bo Balde and Mjallby, 3 giants of centre backs, you know you've got a tough afternoon. But I always made sure that I gave them my best.
Gave them your best. What about the team of, Jimmy Calderwood also took you to Aberdeen as well. The 2 Jimmys that are a kind of infamous duo in Scottish football. What was their synergy? What was their energy like? Because because they were both larger than life characters, there was sometimes it seemed as a fan from the media that there was a bit of poking of fun at them. But when Jimmy Nicholl as intensely as Raith Rovers fans do, and I'm sure Dunfermline fans would have the same kind of respect for Jimmy Calderwood. What was it like actually working with them? What was the depth of knowledge that they had like?
Well, with Jimmy Nicholl, it maybe actually suited him being assistant because he loved being on the training ground. He loved being in amongst the players and telling his stories and having real banter. Jimmy Calderwood loved dealing with the press because Jimmy could talk. So that combination worked really well. And they both obviously had good eyes for players in terms of, transfers and bringing players into the club. So the 2 of them worked really well. And I was, again, fortunate to play with them when they signed me again at 40. So I must have done all right for them early.
I'm going to ask you about the Dunfermline coaching team of Stevie and Jason. I mean, you mentioned earlier that your own experience across the divide. These are 2 guys that, as players, are respected, and indeed as people are respected by both sets of fans, unanimously. Did you see in them, when you were playing with them, that they were kind of students of the game? Did you see that they both had the capacity to go on to coaching roles?
No, not really.
Yeah,
but that applies to a lot of managers where you're given an opportunity, and it's people see something in you that suits the role, and that's what's happened with Stevie. Stevie's done his trade as an assistant. He's fallen in the role, and he's brought his mentor in, Dan Dare, and who he trusts impeccably, and also Greg Shields there. Now Greg plays a big role as well behind the scenes with the younger ones because Greg's great on the training ground as well. So he's helping massively behind the scenes as well. So the 3 of them, I think, are doing a fantastic job, which is great to see.
What would your advice be to kind of relatively new management team coming in? It's from the outside. I can't imagine that there's any tougher job than being involved in football management, because the ebb and the flow and the highs and lows are almost back to back. What would you offer to anybody who's making that journey?
Enjoy the highs and just dig in when it's getting tough, because when you're winning, life's easy. But it's when you're losing games and expecting to win and you don't back that up. That's when it gets tough, and that's the beauty of management. And it's who can hang in there the longest. That who's got the steel, who's got the drive, who can drive their players on and stay in a job, basically. And that's the sad fact of football management, trying to stay in a job. So when you win, fantastic, and it's about enjoying winning.
I remember speaking with John McGlynn during his first time with Raith Rovers, so it'd be about 2008, and it always stuck with me, the line that he said, when the team's going well and the team's winning, it's the players, and when the team's not doing well, it's the manager. And it's always stuck with me as something that I kind of take my hat off to anybody who steps in that dugout and puts their name on the line. Currently, you're guiding young football talent. Tell us about your pro coaching down where you're living just now.
Well, I'm head of coaching at Horsham Football Club, which is a local club to me. And I've also set up my own little venture, CB Pro Coaching, which I coach 8-year-olds up to 13-year-olds. And I'm loving every minute. The number of players is certainly exceeded my expectations. And they seem to be enjoying it. The sad thing is that we've had a month of lockdown. So Friday night will be the first night back to training. So I think all the kids are looking forward to it. I certainly am anyway.
Great. We'll maybe try and we'll maybe speak to our colleagues at RaithTV and try and get a bit of a show reel together for you, and you can show the kids what it was like back in the day.
Well, if we could only wind the clock back, Davey, that would be very nice. But sadly, it's only memories now, but many good ones.
Great. Craig, do you have a parting message for Rovers fans and for our neighbours up the road?
Well, just let's see if we can get both clubs back in the Premier League.
Great thought. I think we'd shake hands on that.
I hope Saturday is a great occasion for both clubs, both sets of players, and all the best to everybody.